as we gather together as followers of Jesus to celebrate, to talk about Christmas. And I know Thanksgiving is this week, and I hope and I pray that every one of us maybe you're traveling or people coming to your house, or it's going to be a really big and like chaotic, crazy, awesome time that you're going to be a part of, or it's going to be really small and simple. I just hope and pray that Thanksgiving is just a great day, a great few days for you. I hope you have amazing food and family, and you get to watch all the football you want. And we just hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. Pray for me. We're going to Phoenix. I have to spend the whole time with my in-laws. And if you've ever met them, you know how much prayer this is going to require. I'm just kidding. They're awesome. They're really great. I like them most of the time. But let's talk about Christmas. And we're going to have a great Thanksgiving this week. I hope you do. And I want to talk about Christmas based around one word, this word Advent. It's being so used right now. We'll get to that in a second. Here's the definition of Advent. There's a couple different ones, but the one for the context that we're talking about, it's a Latin word. It comes from Latin. It's been used for many, many centuries to refer to the coming or the second coming of Christ. That's what the word means. Advent means coming. Some people say it means anticipation, and that you're thinking about and we're celebrating that Jesus came while we anticipate him coming again. And here's the thing about Advent. Now, I think it's important for us to understand this word kind of the same way because it's being attached right now to everything. If you Google the words Advent calendar, just that phrase, what I found in my Google results was that the second thing that came up was an Advent whiskey calendar. The third thing is an Advent wine calendar that you can purchase. I just want to be clear. Those are not the reason for this season. The word Advent is just getting attached to things so that we'll buy them. There's Advent calendars for your pets, which are fine, I guess. But here's the thing. We need to go back before we really go much further and just acknowledge these things of Christmas and Advent and the stuff that's about to happen. The invitations you're getting to the office parties or to your friends or all the different things. Before it gets crazy, before all of that, the shopping is in full force and all of it, can we just go back to the source? Can we just take a step backwards and look at the biographies of Jesus? I want to look at Advent in two of his biographies. First, in Luke's gospel. Luke is this doctor. He goes on this investigative tour and asking all the people who are still alive, what happened in the life of Jesus? And he tells us in chapter 1 of his gospel exactly what he's doing. And in chapter 2, he shares the event of Advent, the coming of Christ. And it has nothing to do with a calendar for any sort of thing. It's just simply these words. Maybe they're familiar to you. Luke chapter 2, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken in the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. And she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. There were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, watching over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You'll find a baby wrapped in cloths, lying in a manger." This season is so crazy for all of us. And sometimes we just have to take a step back and remind ourselves of the events. You're going to see all of these images. You're going to see cards and snow globes and programs on TV and commercials, and you're going to see Advent calendars and all the things depicting the events that Luke records. My favorite way to watch it is Charlie Brown's Christmas special. I mean, it's the top, where Charlie Brown actually just reads what I read at the beginning of the school play on Christmas. It'll be played a couple times. You can YouTube it, watch it anytime you want. That's kind of awesome. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, the events of Christmas, the things that happen, they feel like they happened so long ago and in such a different time and place that we feel like they don't connect to us anymore. We love celebrating them. We love all of the things that come with this season. But do we understand how these events really impact real life? I mean, even if you were to go, I was just there about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. If you were to go to Bethlehem, where this took place, it's nothing like it was in the time of Jesus. You go to this gigantic cathedral of a church that sits on the place most likely where Jesus was born. And all around it are cars honking and people selling things. And it's just life is happening. The city is moving all around. And inside of the church will be thousands of people wanting to look at the place where Jesus was born, pushing and shoving and yelling at each other. And it's not like it was. And you can go to a place where there are shepherd's fields. The first time I went to Israel in 2001, there were still shepherds watching over flocks of sheep and goats on these hills outside of Bethlehem. Today, that same exact spot's covered with apartment buildings and high rises. And it feels like it's just this world that we read about in Luke 2 doesn't exist anymore. But thankfully, we can find Advent in other places. See, if we look at John's gospel, Jesus' best friend, it said the one whom he loved, his closest follower, the person he connected to the most. In John's story of Advent, he does something totally different than what Luke does. See, Luke tells you the events of what happened, the sequence of things. What John does when he recounts the events of Advent is he tells us the theology of it. He tells us what difference it actually makes. Look at how he starts his biography of Jesus in John's gospel. In the beginning was the Word. When he says the Word, he's talking about Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him, in Jesus, was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. And then in verse 14, he tells us the story of Advent. The Word became flesh. Jesus was born, a person, fully God, fully man. The Word became flesh, made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Don't forget, or just realize, maybe for the first time, that the real meaning of Advent, the real story of Christmas, is that the thing that separated you and me from God is ended. Advent is the story of the end of the separation between God and man. The theological, kind of the academic word for this is incarnation. That God became flesh. What John describes is, what difference does this make? Shepherds and wise men and babies and mangers and all of it can get lost in the craziness of this season. But don't lose the point. The point is what we just sang, that first song, so appropriate. O come, Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. It's the story of Christmas in just one word in a song. The separation between God and us is over. He has indeed come. And we call that Advent. So what part do we play in that? Is it just some series of events that happened long ago in a different place, a different time? Or is it something that still happens today and it's something we participate in? I think it is. And if Advent is the end of the separation between God and man, what can we do? What part can you and I play? And I believe the greatest thing we can do, the thing we're called to do as followers of Jesus, if we've accepted him into our life, we're following him, the greatest part we can play in Advent is helping others find an end to their separation with God. I want you to start to think about, and this is part of the reason we're having this conversation, we're kicking off Christmas now, is before it gets too crazy in your life. Can we stop and pause and think and start to pray and consider, who is it that I can invite to be a part of what we're going to do as a church together over this upcoming month? Who is it that you know that's separated from God? Maybe they call themselves a Christian. Maybe they're very, they would never call themselves separated, but you just look at their life and you realize it would be better if they were connected to Jesus. If they were following Jesus, their life would be better. You know somebody like that, and so do I. What is it we can do to help them come and join us one of these weekends as we celebrate Advent together? As Wes talked about, there's so many opportunities we do as a church. We're ringing the bell for Salvation Army. We are getting Angel Tree cards. And what that is a gift program for children whose parents are incarcerated. Those are things you could do with a friend. You can invite them. You could grab some of those angels off the tree in the lobby and take your friends shopping and have conversations about why we do those sorts of things. Maybe your life group or your rooted group is having a Christmas party. Could you bring friends who need to connect with other people? One of the things we do, we put so much time and effort into every single weekend, especially at Christmas, but Christmas Eve. You see here we have 7,000 services that night. No, it's 6. You don't have to count them. I've been counting them for months. You know why we do 6 services? Why we put so much time and effort into this season of Advent as a group together? So many of our team are volunteers. It takes so much, but it's worth it because we want you to have options. We want your friends who need to experience an end of their separation with God to have as few excuses as possible. I mean, all of those different times are so that people we know have the opportunity to join us. And today, the way you can participate in Advent is just begin to think and to pray. Who can I bring? To a service day, to a weekend service, to Christmas Eve. It takes time. It takes effort. And the reason we do all of those things is this is the perfect opportunity. This season is the perfect opportunity to proclaim the end of separation between God and man. There's a couple other things we can do to participate in Advent. The other is to practice generosity. We use the money as a church that's given at the end of the year during this holiday season. That's how we decide what we're able to do next year. And our budget and our plans for our benevolence fund is something that we'll fund over these next few weeks for next year. So when a family in our church, a family in our community is in need, we have money set aside for that. For our community engagement, all of the partners that we have locally and around the world, we set all of that up based on what happens these next few weeks. And so we just very clearly say, hey, this is the time to do what God's called you to do in the area of generosity. The reason Christy and I give to Christ Church more at this season than we do the rest of the year, where we give a tithe at least every single month. But this month, we try to do more. Because just like you, we get asked from all sorts of great causes and organizations who need support and funds and help, and Thanksgiving and Christmas are just natural times. We want to be generous. But the reason we do it through the church is I know that about 24 different organizations and causes, some local, some global, will be funded through what our church does. It's the way to not have to figure out where to go with it, it helps one place. We're helping families. Our main focus as a church of generosity this December is to help families who are doing foster care in our church and in our community have an incredible Christmas. And families that have had foster kids that are now adopted those children as well. Next week, we're also going to share some very specific ways, tangible ways you can help us with the finish of the remodeling of the property next to NAU so that in the very near future, the students there have a new place to find hope, to find connection and relationship, to understand that the separation between them and God has been closed. Don't discount the role that generosity can play in your participation of Advent. And also don't discount, I hear this so often, as many of us think, well, what I can do is very small. It might be $10 or $20. Don't discount what God can do with just whatever it is that you're able to be generous with. It might be the year that you start with a $20 act of generosity, but for some of us it's $2,000. Some of us it could be $20,000, so that our church can end this year as financially healthy as possible, so that the things God's called us to do we can step into fully. What role do you play in Advent? inviting people to come with you is so important. We get to help them in their own separation. Practicing generosity is another way that we can participate in proclaiming what Jesus has done. And then for some of us, I just have to mention this for a moment. There's some of us in this room that we have to accept our own gift of Christmas. And maybe this is the season of Advent. This is the season of Christmas where you've been checking it out, or maybe you've been on the sidelines of faith, and it's this picture in my mind of your connection with God through Christ. It's something that you have to take on yourself. The way I look at it, the way I understand it, is God doesn't force that on us. That he offers a gift. It's very much like he's wrapped a present that's been sitting under the tree of your life for many years, maybe for months, for who knows how long, and it's unopened. And there's still separation between some of us here today and God. When I talk about that end of separation, it causes you to realize, no, I have still been separating from God, and that's the choice we make sometimes. The gift of Advent is here for every single one of us. Could this be the year that you choose to open that gift for yourself? All throughout the New Testament, and Jesus' teaching to his first followers, it's very clear that the way that we open that gift is through baptism. It's not earning a gift, it's surrendering our life and saying, I put my trust. It's simply a demonstration of trust. And one of the coolest things right now that I'm celebrating is through this year of 2019, 102 people have made the decision, have been baptized in our church, ending their own separation with God. There have been children, there have been students, high school students, college students, adults of all ages and walks of life. 102 people have already made that choice. It's an amazing thing that God's doing. Is it your time? For some of us, I think it is, this Christmas, to make the same declaration that not only did Jesus come, but that he came for you. And that you place your trust, your life in his hands. For some of you, it's time to consider opening that gift for yourself. And the greatest way you could participate in Advent is that. After this service, as Wes mentioned earlier, I'm going to be at the back of the room at Info Central. And if you're wanting to just say hi, if you're new and we've never met, I'd love that opportunity. But if you want to talk about it, you have questions about what it would mean to open the gift of Advent for you, of following Christ with your life and trusting him. And maybe even now, for some of us, God's Spirit is nudging in our hearts. And you just want to talk to someone. I'll be there, Wes, other people that we can have that conversation. If this is that day that you want to talk about it, we're there. See, Advent is the end of the separation between us and God. I hope you'll be here every weekend this season as we celebrate together that Emmanuel, he's come. God is with us. He's indeed come, and he will indeed come again. So we're going to finish our time together singing a little bit more of that song. O come, Emmanuel. Would you stand and join us?